Okay, welcome to Lunar Alchemy. I guess I have to start recording. My name is John. This is Bella. If you're just joining us on Facebook, thanks for joining our discussion today. I'm really excited about our discussion today because we've gone into this phase of the solar transit around the mandala, and we've entered into the ring of matter. This is the set of gene keys through which spirit's process of involution is fully realized into our world. So this process of being a spiritual being in a human body is all about these sets of gene keys, how we develop as human beings, and really when we begin to look at these, how we can develop into the next phase of human evolution. Hello, J-Lo. Welcome to our solar members. Happy to have you. So today we're talking about the shadow of judgment. And this is a perfect next stage because just last week we finished moving through the transit through the shadow of seriousness. And these two really impact one another and how we relate to ourselves as individuals in the world. So Bella, I don't know what it is about this particular transit, but I feel like it's been ages since I saw you. And it was really just last week, just 1 week ago that we met. So I don't know if you're experiencing that. I think for me, I realized that we're moving through an area where we're hitting both of my personality and design north nodes in a quick succession. This gene key 18 is my design north node, and gene key 6 is my personality north node. So we just went through the 6 a couple weeks ago. So I've been in a serious hermit mode, just like completely hands off of anything, trying to work through what's happening. And I've seen a lot of social media posts of people feeling like they're getting super blasted by galactic energy. So I'm very curious to hear your take on this.
Yeah, I feel like I've been deep too when I was sharing last week about what we are doing with Ashley in our year-long course, which is that depth of Pluto, Chiron, and unconscious Mars. So working with the wounding and especially Pluto, which was discovered not long ago. Chiron was discovered in 1977, I think, and Pluto in 1930. And there is something where this has become available for us as human beings. And I was saying before, Jayla who's here now too, was with me on the other call, where I believe when we are cavemen, a lot of our time is just to make sure that we survive, that we have food, that we have shelter. And now the last 100 years, when we have electricity, when we can turn on a lamp during the night and read and these things, it's changed immensely where we can put our focus and our energy. So for me, I feel with Pluto and Chiron, they're showing us parts that we didn't have access to before, and they are so far out. So we are speaking about transpersonal energies and planets, especially in Pluto, which is collective and generational. So people that are born, because it takes 248 years around the wheel, it is going to be generational. People that were born the same year as me are going to have the same gene key. And that is what's been alive for me the last weeks, that 32, where I have my Pluto, and that's where Mercury went retrograde. So for sure, there is something for me to go over. The retrograde is that possibility for reflection, for slowing down. So now we have Mercury there for a while, and it's actually in square to Pluto. So there is something when it comes to the wound that wants to be transformed, that wants to die. And we have spoken about it for a long time, I feel, here as well, with the codon ring of alchemy, the 4 gene keys there, and then the codon ring of matter. this is the part of the wheel where there is an alchemy that's going on that's really deep into the body, and also really deep into the lineage, our conditioning, parental conditioning. If I would say one word for the 18 that we're looking at today, it is parental conditioning. And to become aware of that, and from that place of awareness, actually coming back and becoming our own parents, and being able to take responsibility for what the integrity is in the world for each one of us. Yeah, so from there we can go into the charts, or I would love to hear if you have anything about this that comes up for you.
Yeah, really, what really intrigues me about Gene Key 18, and I know there are a few other gene keys that share a similar quality, but very few of the gene keys feel quite as dependent upon transpersonal interaction as 18. And this really goes back, this is so interesting to me that, this is personal to me, that these are my north nodes, 6 and 18. But gene key 6 is the shadow of conflict. And when we had our discussion about that, I was talking about the role of energetic boundaries in our experience, and how they play at being a protection for us for the aspects of self that are not yet integrated or fully realized. And here in Gene Key 18, our relationship with our parents is completely, it completely impacts how we develop as a personality in terms of the boundaries that are set, in terms of what are the expectations of our parents, what is the integrity of our parents, what is the maybe what is the constriction of our parents in terms of what is allowed from a behavioral standpoint. Do our parents set very strong boundaries that are for behaviors that are expected and hold to them? I know a lot of people who grow up in a military household where one or both of the parents are part of the military. They grow up with a certain level of discipline surrounding the boundaries that they have to follow. And for some people, that produces a huge amount of rebellion, meaning the children grow up to try and break through all of those boundaries. And that situation, that as an example, would never occur without that transpersonal energy coming between the internal energy that is coming out for expression of the child and what can be seen as the external energy coming from the parents in terms of that disciplining and boundary making. So there are so many other dynamics that we could look at in terms of parents and children. The opposite is also true. When there are no boundaries and the child is allowed to just kind of like float around, sometimes that child will have a difficult time establishing their own integrity because their parents never modeled that integrity for them. So they end up running into the problems of this shadow of judgment in very large ways. So, I mean, in terms of psychological development, this phase from 14 to 21, this third phase of our growth into an adult, where we're working out these early cycles that were set in motion with our birth. Our personalities could go completely this way or completely this way or completely down the middle, depending on the environment that we're in and the way that our parents show up around us, or the authority figures in our lives show up around us. You know, some people have really impactful relationships with a teacher or a coach or a mentor of some kind when they were young. And those can be incredibly powerful guiding processes for who we're going to become as an adult. So for me, looking at this particular gene key and the role that it plays, it has so much to do with our functionality as adults in terms of how do we handle the energetic imprinting that we received in the womb, in our infancy and early childhood, and the formative stage, that emotional stage where we begin to relate to the sexual creative energy that powers our life in that age 7 to 14. You know, all of those things come together and our personality gets developed through this process of forming judgments and eventually opinions from the 17 as we move into adulthood. So that's where I'm looking, and how can we unravel that process so that our sort of essential nature can move into a more mature expression in our experience. So when we're looking at this gene key and this process of age 14 to 21, we're really talking about the development of the mind. And there's a lot of focus from our scientific understanding of this logical, mathematical aspect of our brains on the left side of our brain. And that, of course, controls the left side of the brain, controls the right side of the body, which is the masculine side of the body. Logic is a masculine form of energy. I'm really curious, Bella, how you see this particular gene key in terms of the relationship between the masculine and feminine energies and how that kind of plays into what's happening right now in our current transit period. Because, you know, I don't know if this is because of the way it is, like the way the cosmos has been this year, or if it has to do with your particular genius in picking out these energetic qualities. But I feel like so many times when we've looked at these transits, you're able to pick out these elements of Venus and Mars that sometimes they're in places that have nothing to do. I mean, everything has something to do with everything else, but they're not close to the gene key we're focusing on with the sun in any way. But somehow the relationship between where Mars and Venus is, no matter where they are, it shares something that seems like so potent and pertinent to what we're talking about. So I'm curious about your view on this.
Yeah, there is something interesting with the gene keys, and I wish I had a chart where we could see the actual planets that are coding for everything in the profile. But the interesting thing here is that period between 14 and 21, it's coded by Venus, which is the feminine energy. But like what you're saying, what's developing there is the mentality, or the psychology, the mentality. And when we look at the period between 7 and 14, it's Mars, which is the EQ, the emotional. So IQ is coded by Venus and EQ is coded by Mars. And I almost believe that if part of it can be, it's the part of us where we don't really dare to go. So the masculine either it doesn't really dare to go to the emotional depth, or and it's the same time. So the immaturity lies there. For the masculine, the immaturity lies in the emotion, because that's often escaped. And for women, it's almost it's the opposite. So it's escaping from the logical into the emotions and the drama of that. So then what needs to be developed is maybe that more logical. And at the same time, as I'm saying it, it's a little bit paradoxical that we have Venus coding EQ and Mars coding IQ and Mars coding EQ. And at the same time, if we are feminine and masculine everywhere, it's going to be a feminine and masculine in the SQ, in the EQ, in the IQ. I think we could go much deeper and unravel, why it is. And Richard is even, he's speaking to why that is the way that it is. But I think it's, for now, let's just remember that it's actually Venus that is coding the EQ, and that is our psychology, like how we learn to deal with things on a more psychological level, whereas the EQ is more about ideology and a bit, or even more dangerous in a way, because how we feel about something is often, well, they're both, how we feel about something, how we think about something, how we process it mentally or emotionally, they are both powerful. So let's go into the chart and see, okay, where do we have Venus and Mars in this chart? And I don't know if they have to do with each other, but like you say, they always have to do with the transit that we're in. So we have Mars here now it's in the 48. And then we have Venus here in the 43. Well, the first thing, they actually do have to do with each other. But the first thing that I was seeing is this kind of opposition. As soon as Sun is moving on into 48 in a day and a half, not even, like less than a day and a half, we're going to have this opposition between Venus and between Sun and Mars together, opposite Chiron. So that is that wound. That is often a wound of inadequacy. Funny enough, they are going to be 48, the shadow of inadequacy, that wound from the childhood where we weren't so good at something. And I was saying last week in our call with our group that my Chiron is 23, and I'm often, of course, seen as being a translator, translating and merging systems and speaking many languages. But I remember being like 3 and 4 years old and having been almost all year or several months, at least in Sweden in school. And we went to Spain, and it was hard at first day to kind of come into the rhythm of communicating with my cousins in Spain, because it was 3 or 4. I don't even think I knew on a conscious level there are different languages. And I was like, this feeling of not being able to speak fast enough and being understood. I remember that. And Chiron is often where we work, because we feel inadequate. Then we work so much around it, so we become really skillful at it. And maybe we still feel, though, like we don't have it. We don't have the authority in that. So maybe we do give it to the world, but inside we still kind of feel wounded in that area. And that is something where I feel with the 18 and the 48, with our childhood, with our psychology, where is it that we're still rigid in our mind, thinking we're not good enough? And this came out in a session I did this morning too for myself. It's like, where do I think in a way still, or where do I have an imprint so that I'm still disconnected from the world? Because inadequacy, I believe, is one of the biggest thing for a disconnection. When I work with my intimacy work and the tantric work, the biggest thing for people that aren't happy with their intimacy with themselves and with others is that inadequacy. Because when you feel inadequate, you don't actually really dare to go there. And sometimes it's so stupid, to be human. I remember last year when I was like, oh my God, I can't do laser, I can't do waxing, like everything is closed. What if I have like body hair? Like, how is that? That was an inadequacy for me. And it was good to kind of have to live through it, because really it doesn't matter in intimacy or in anything else if you have a little bit of body hair. When you can like laugh at it, then everything becomes more playful, going back all the way to the 46, and to the integrity and the perfection. You see, how much have your hair grown from we started, John?
Yeah, if you look at, from our first over a year ago, we were doing some sessions with Simone, and we were looking at the consciousness of our soul levels. You can see all of my hair is like very, very closely cut, and you know, I always had facial hair, but it was extraordinarily light. You know, like I kept it very, very short, and sometimes I'd let the chin grow just a little bit. Anyways, the the feeling of I really love that you brought up this point, because what it centers on, this feeling of inadequacy that you're talking about, it really has to do with the amount of seriousness we put upon the judgment of those things that we have identified with. Mm-hmm. So, like, if we have an identity that is centered around being clean cut, or having a sleek, we experience ourselves as being totally sleek or whatever in a feminine way. This idea of wild that can occur when changes within our body, natural things take place, it challenges that identification, and is going to trigger through our judgments all of those patterns of not wholeness that got set in motion when we were in the womb, infants, toddlers, and children. These energetic patterns that are really running our lives can be seen immediately if we tune in to our judgments or our opinions that we have about those things. And what it does is it really shines a light on how are we identifying ourselves. And then if we're really serious about that identity and we're really taking it seriously, we're going to suffer, because nothing's going to turn that judgment off. Our mind is a judgment machine. And I love that Richard Rudd calls out being non-judgmental as kind of like a ridiculous concept, because like, how could you possibly not be in a state of judgment around all of the things in your environment, as long as you see yourself as separate from all of those things? I can imagine if I didn't identify myself as being separate from anything else in the universe, that I would recognize myself with the animals and the trees and all of humanity as the exact same thing, and I would experience that directly, my judgment machine would be completely turned off. But that's the only way I can imagine that, So those judgments where we end up with a negative feeling attached to it, I think it really helps us to see where our identifications are bubbling up from those early patterns, inadequacy being one of those major ones. And no surprise that that shows up in the intimacy work that you do, because what context is it more important that you're an adequate partner? I mean, our genes are like literally driving us to find the best possible genetic bond with another human being so that we can create a stronger generation after us. So if we're feeling inadequate and we've got a pattern of that happening, man, it's deep.
Exactly. It's really deep. And I think what I'm pointing at in the chart that can help us, it's this trine, this harmonious, the blue lines that goes to the North Node. And you were speaking about your North Node before. It's in Gemini still. And it is about that curiosity. And for me, that is the thing that I feel, playfulness is one word, but curiosity is another word that is very important, because we can stay stuck in our inadequacy forever. But if we get really curious about the world, the kind of cat, curiosity kills the cat. But that's the thing. The cat has 8 lives as well, or 9 lives, or 7 lives. I don't know how many lives. But that's the thing. When we can tune into that curiosity, then it's like you can't, like, it's almost like the inadequacy can't hold you back anymore because you're curious about the world. And then we see the other blue line that goes to Saturn, which is this 41 about anticipation. There is something in the energy now. If we can overcome our inadequacy, if we can overcome our judgment, what's down here, and especially because we have it in, remember astrologically, those gene keys are in Libra. So often it is with the other, how we feel in relation to the other or how we perceive the other. So if we can move out of that inadequacy and that judgment and look at the curiosity and the present in the moment, like I say, it doesn't matter if there is some beard or there's some, like there's like the curiosity, like what's behind the beard, to kind of laugh at it or joke about it. And then Saturn, it's because Saturn often has to do with time and Saturn has to do with that more severe aspect sometimes. But I feel here, it's almost like Saturn, with everything that's going on this year with Uranus and Saturn and the square, I almost feel like at the end of the day, the only way we can move is forward. We can't move backwards. That now is the only thing that exists, and the only where we can move, it is that evolution. And for me, I feel like there is a evolution in the interpersonal and the personal that is happening thanks to us moving with curiosity towards our truth. Gemini, messenger, truth, curiosity. And even what I can feel here is that even we even get helped by Saturn. It's time for something new to be stable, to be what it is, what is the way that we move. Yes,
Yeah.
that would be about that. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention that you brought up is the Mars and the Venus. And Venus doesn't really like to be in Scorpio. She likes to be in Libra. Mars doesn't really like to be in Libra. He likes to be in Scorpio. So they are home in the other one's sign. So there is something here. There's something here. The same thing that, like we looked at the IQ and the EQ, they are kind of in each other's position. And that is because maybe what we should call that Eden loop. You can never have one without the other. It's a similar loop between the core, which is unconscious Mars, and then SQ, the conscious Mars. You can never have one without the other. We have the pathway of realization between the core and the SQ. We have the pathway, I believe, of intelligence. Real intelligence needs IQ and EQ. You can't have real intelligence if it's just from the mind or if it's just from the emotion. Actually, so many things where we are right now in the evolution speak about that. And the other place that would say the same thing is splenic awareness, and then left mind awareness and emotional awareness. And they're all coming together, becoming like one compass. We can't live just with the instinct of animals, just with that problem solving focus that maybe made us become human from being apes. But now where we're mutating, developing is that emotional center. And I feel like what you are speaking about too with the 6 and with the 18, it has to do with also emotional maturity, to be able to walk through life without seeing the conflict with everything, and without judging everything at the low level. And that's what Richard Rudd says, when you judge from the heart, there's nothing like there. That's just purity. That's discernment. That's discrimination. And it's not a low frequency to judge from the heart, because that means to see and observe and know. So that's what I feel is happening in the emotional center. And I feel like there are those opportunities right now to see, where don't we feel home, but where can we still go deeper? Like where can Venus go deeper when she doesn't really like to be in Scorpio? But what is it? What are the insights, the gift frequency of the 43 that are there? And for Mars, where can he be a little bit more diplomatic? Where can he understand the inadequacy, but also the wisdom, the judgment, but also the integrity? So I feel like there is that opportunity right now to be a little bit with the uncomfortable, to be with some of the wounding, and at the same time have the curiosity to move beyond it, and even be helped by what I feel like a planet like Saturn that usually tells us like what doesn't work, but it's almost, like I said, having that backing up of it. And then again, there is an aspect, I guess it's a square between Pluto and there are things that are going to have to die. That's what we say over and over and over again. So what is it that doesn't work anymore? Is it inadequacy? Maybe is it the judgment? Is it the way that, you know, we kind of feel like we're failures here in the shadow frequency of failure? They're all the fears. Well, that would be the last one. They're all the fears that we have all these closer planets, like you're saying. Venus already went through them, and now we have the sun, and we have Mars, and we have Mercury, that are going through all these fear of inadequacy, fear of tomorrow, fear. What is the fear in? Well, the fear of not finding your fractal, I guess. And here we have corruption, the fear of failure, the fear of not having a purpose, the fear of like the wrongness or things going wrong, what's been spoiled, like all the different fears, the instinct here. We're going through that. So it's not a comfortable time, but there is also an intuition and a wisdom that comes with all that. And when we can kind of be with it, there is an enormous wisdom, I believe, as well, in those gates that we're going through.
Yeah, I'm very glad you brought up curiosity. I wanted to bring that in. If you're watching on Facebook or for our members, I'm curious if you could take a moment and consider a period of your life that you would not want to relive. And what period of your life would that be? You know, just think about that for a minute. See if you hone in on a particular place. I don't know where you're landing on that. Feel free to share if you'd like. For many people that I've known in my life, they would, without hesitation, say, teenager. I never want to be a teenager again. And there may be a different period in your life. For me, it happened around my Saturn return. My teenage years were extraordinarily smooth overall. And I actually had a lot of fun. Not the kind of fun that is like wild and stupid, but I just enjoyed what I was doing. So, however, when we look at this period of the teenage years, if that is a period that has some really big sore spots, this 18 has got a huge role in your life. And that's beautiful, JLo. You said, I know it all played a part to bringing me where I am, so you wouldn't change a thing. I can echo that. But the question is a little different. It's not what would you change if you could? It's what part of your life would you not desire to return to again because you have to live it again. Let's say you just had to live another part of your life over again, not necessarily to do it differently, to do it exactly the same way that you did it. What would you not want to go through again? Not that there isn't positive outcome from that, because this development period of from 14 to 21 is essential for determining how we are going to experience the rest of our lives as adults and the processes that we're going to engage in as an evolutionary being. So not to do it over and get it different, but which part was unpleasant that you wouldn't want to experience again. And the reason for that is because if there's a part of our life where we wouldn't want to live through it again compared to other parts of our life that we really enjoyed for one reason or another, it's likely that there are areas of unconsciousness that were arising into our experience. So that's what we're doing in Lunar Alchemy. We are identifying the aspects of self that are as yet unconscious, because we all have it. We all have a subconscious mind. We all have unconsciousness. with the intelligence that exists inside our physical bodies. And part of this process of bringing the fullness of our spirit into our physical body is about opening up that entire, all of those layers to bring them into consciousness. You know, I think one of the things that we may discover through this human evolution that we're moving through, as we're moving through this solar plexus process, is when we find ourselves out on the other side of this evolution, we're going to have a completely different relationship with our subconsciousness and our unconsciousness. We may have connections to our spleen center where we know what's going on in our physical body all the time. We know all of the processes of digestion, of cellular regeneration, of discomfort or inflammation that's going on in our bodies. We may be extraordinarily tied into those things. So part of what we're doing is finding a way into how can we become aware of those. So, you know, for me, if I'm looking at, for instance, you know, that period that I wouldn't want to necessarily live through again, probably, you know, it's not that I didn't have a good time sometimes. I did really enjoy it. But some of those hardest conflicts that I experienced happened between ages 27 and 30, where for me, I was most uncomfortable with myself, and my outer world was actually now reflecting that fully. Whereas previously in my life, the outer world didn't show me such a clear expression of the inner conflict that was occurring within me. And I really didn't enjoy seeing that conflict on the outside. You know, that wasn't fun. Interesting that I use that word conflict because that is my personality north node. So, you know, it's part of for me what I'm here to be as a spiritual mechanism. So, you know, that was kind of bridging between the next 7-year cycle and the one after that. So, you know, age 28 is right at the end of the next 7-year cycle and moving into that. So for me, I could look back and say, oh, what was going on around the ages of 7 or 8 in my life that really impacted me, that was an energetic pattern that showed up again for me there. And it's probably something that even goes back to the conclusion of the gestation period before I was born, because there was probably an event that occurred at that time for me that set that thing in motion. And I didn't get to see it until Saturn came around, right? So these are some of the ways we can look at, okay, why is this relevant to me? Or how can I explore something that's unconscious? We can look at what are the judgments that we have that we're attached to or connected with. Do I still have some attachments that I'm connected to around that Saturn returns period for me? Do you have some judgments or attachments around your teenage years? Think about your parents. How is that relationship? And if you think of your teenage years in relationship with your parents, it's likely that if there are patterns in that time that are still processing for you, they were present then in some form. Bella, any last thoughts before we move into a process of energetically harmonizing all of this stuff?
I believe give yourself some time. You know, I usually speak very quickly. You know, there are usually so many ideas after you speak, and I I could feel today, I could have said something in the beginning when you spoke, and I just actually really like the pause. And I feel in this coding of matter, there are so many patterns, dynamics that are very automatic. That Eden loop that we're speaking about, that shadow frequency between the inner feminine and masculine, the outer and the inner. There's so many automatic ways of reacting, and when we can pause and not be so quick of saying or doing the same thing, something new opens up. And Ashley and I did a live this morning, or in the beginning of the day, about expectations and how easy it is when your expectations aren't met to judge and then lash out in a way that is kind of automatic, and how we had both actually found each other, found in ourselves that we weren't lashing out, we're kind of dealing with it on the inside. And that was interesting. So yeah, pauses for introspection and for becoming aware of those automatic patterns is what I feel. And it's going to be the same energy as we move into the 48 now at the end of tomorrow, I guess. That would be just what's part of the alchemy that can happen this week. And if you're watching on Facebook, you're not going to do the transmission, but I feel like this is also what the transmission is going to help to ground in us, because I always feel after transmissions that there is more of a pausing and awareness of how I move in space and how I speak, how I show up. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the transmission, and I think that you posted the link already, John, if people want to join. That's what I have for now.
That's beautiful. I love that you bring, two of these qualities that today that you are able to pull from either your intellect or your feeling, or maybe even your body, is this need for a pause. And what I see can arise, let's say our mind instantly moves into judgment, and we can bring ourselves to pause before acting out that judgment. What happens in the space of that pause? If we take a breath and become present, curiosity might arise. Where is this judgment coming from? What part of me needs to be expressed that has a more authentic form than the judgment that I have? I love this idea, because that curiosity just opens a gateway to completely dissolving any energetic pattern, no matter how powerfully it was set in motion during our childhood and development periods. We can instantly just dissolve it as we're moving in our relationship. So I absolutely love that. And our transmission today is going to, in harmony with the codon ring of matter, we're going to be dealing with the specific matter of the brain and harmonizing the left and right hemispheres along with the front and the back of the brain, so that we have a harmonious response to all of the experiences that are coming into our life, rather than a one-sided response that leads us into reaction. So for those of you following our discussions on Facebook, you can find that link in the comments. We'd love to see you, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a future discussion.